if we were questioning if it looked level or not, we'll prove it real quick that, hey, what do you know? Basically a degree off. And go to the other side, same thing. So the reason it looked crooked, because it is. And show you how we're gonna fix this real quick. I'm gonna hit that button and magically it now reads 0. So it must be level, right? Ta-da! It's a complete joke. The thing is in there a degree crooked, and we're just gonna live with that. Alright, kind of got this party started without y'all already. Rear end obviously pulled out the car, also got the fuel tank out the back. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put this sway bar up in the car because the thing's got a whole lot of roll to it, and that should definitely help. What we're going to do first is find our center on this back brace. This whole brace is what the springs end up mounting to, your shocks, your upper arms. So it should be fine to put a sway bar back there as well. And there is enough room to fit. It's going to be super tight. I took measurements before I bought the sway bar, so it should fit. But like I said, it's going to be tight. And while we're in here, we're also going to replace these factory arms, because if you look at that, them rubbers are definitely stuck in place. Alright, my camera died there for a second. Like I said, we're going to replace these while we're in there as well, just because that's definitely not helping with keeping the whole rear free and functioning properly. So I'm going to find center on that bar and we'll get back to you. Alright, found center of the cross member here, which that's this line here. And if you look, it actually lined it up perfect with the center of that hole. I can only imagine that hole is something for locating when they build the chassis at the factory. But up here, went ahead and ground the paint off on that corner and the corner over there. What we're going to do right now is we're just going to mount the whole bar, or tack it in. I mean, we're not going to permanently mount it. We're just going to tack it in and just run the whole rear through the motion to make sure the arms will clear. These arms, they also miss the springs because everything, like I said, is super tight before. The reason this thing can't get permanently welded to the frame, I'm gonna end up having to drill bolt holes in here, weld tabs up top to bolt it into, is because if I ever had to take the torsion bar that's inside of this out, I couldn't, because it would end up hitting the inside of the frame. So if that thing got welded completely in, there's no servicing it whatsoever. Same thing with, if you look right there, it's a bronze bushing. Those bushings are replaceable. So if this thing was welded in and something happened, the only way you'd ever get it out to replace it or repair it is cutting it back out and welding it in, and that's just no good, because what's the point of that if you can't work on something? So for the moment, like I said, we're just going to tack it on the ground spots, run the whole rear through motion just to make sure everything clears, and we'll go from there. Depending on how it clears, I'm thinking I'm going to have to end up moving the heim joints to the inside of the bar, but we'll see how that goes. Alright, a little bit of change of plans. I originally was going to just tack the legs onto the cross member up there, but the more I got to thinking about it, that's a pretty dumb idea. And the reason being is, if by pure chance that this length turns out to be correct on what I need, I would then have to pull it back out, make brackets, weld it back in, and hope that I got everything in the right spot. So what I did instead was I just went ahead and took my angle iron, rounded the edges just to make it look slightly better, tacked it to the legs, because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to drill 2 holes in that bracket and in the leg while it's tacked together. That way the holes are true to each other. Then I'll grind the tacks off, weld it in place, and then I can still slip this in and out, and the brackets are on there. So that way I'm not having to do it twice. And because of the length, man, there's a shadow. Because of the length of that, I'm gonna go ahead and put 2 holes in it. And if it's too long, what I can do is then with the bolt hole spacing that I'm gonna drill, I can drill another hole up there and then cut the end off. That way I still have 2 in it. And then there's just shortening the distance on that leg to be able to create the clearance I need if I do. So that's what I'm gonna get ready to do real fast, is just drill 2 holes in there, grind that off, bolted it together, and then put it up in place and see what it looks like. All right, got the holes drilled in the brackets. You know, like I said, I welded them, drilled them. And if you look right there, I already got 2 more dimples in place in case I have to shorten this. Once we get in the car, we'll figure that out. But if I do, I can just cut it down and drill another hole. Those are 1 inch apart. And I can take it all the way up to there. So that's actually 2 inches. I can shorten this if I have to. But the whole reason for wanting to weld it together and drill your holes is because there's no way you'd be able to freehand either one of those and have a bolt go through it that smooth. I mean, I guess you could if if you're super good, but I already got this one done. Like I said, we just bolt it together, put it in, and then once we get it tacked, we'll be able to pull the whole thing back out. So big help when you're drilling hole through 2 pieces, tack it together, and then grind it off and you'll be good to go. There it is. Got it tacked up in there. Just hit it with the little welder for the moment, but level, straight, in the center. I'm gonna get it pulled off and fully weld the brackets to the chassis, and then we'll put it all back together and make sure it clears everything. But I know it kind of looks a little close to that upper arm, but that upper arm is actually in ride height position, so it's got quite a bit of upwards travel before it actually hits it, and I don't think this thing would ever squat that much to hit it, so we should be good. It's up in there. I swear the thing looks as crooked as can be, but no matter where I put a level at on the frame and on the bar, everything's square and level. I mean, that thing looks really off in my opinion, but I've used 2 different levels and checked it multiple times, so I guess it can't be off. But it's up in there. Got it welded. Everything clears, misses the shocks, the upper arms. I even put the spring up in there just to make sure that the outside of the arms clear it, because it's going to be close, but it's got about almost 1 inch of clearance from the outside of the bar to the inside of the spring. So we should be good to go. Once I'm not going to put the rear back up in there to make sure it's misses here once the arms move, until I get the new arms, just because there's no need to try and mock everything up with the factory ones when that's not what I'm going to be using. So this should be in the next couple of days, and then I'll be able to check that out. But little thing I like to do when I'm welding on these things is, because you know, if you weld on one corner, it'll try and pull on the other. But if you drill a hole in it, and you probably saw in the brackets earlier that it had a hole, and what I do is I fill that first. That way it's welded in the center, so no matter which edge you weld on, it keeps it straight and flat. It doesn't try pulling it one way or another. So just something I like to do when I'm putting a bracket in, and you got enough space and room to do that. It works pretty good. So you can see a little bit better movement from this side, it'll hit all the way right there, but I don't think that's going to be an issue by the time it gets in there and you got the thing sitting level, because to have that much upward travel, I just don't see it doing that, but we'll find out sooner than later. But yeah, I'm pleased with it. It's turning out pretty good. It's tight in here with everything, but it does clear, so it should be good. Something I wanted to show you while I just got this first bar out. Pulled it out. This is a M12 bolt. That's what runs right here to hold the upper bar in. My upper ones, just like my lower ones, are drilled for a 1/2 inch, which is nothing wrong with that. The only issue is when you go to put it in, it's got a lot of play to it. It's pretty loose, and part of the reason is just because of the size of the hole, and also, if you can see there, the thing is pretty beat up on the inside and out, and that's because it's just a 30-year-old car, you know, getting beat up and down, going up and down the road, and it's not made to be precise. It doesn't have to be. It's just factory stuff. So what I do is, one way of cleaning up that hole on the outside and the inside is I actually take a 9/16 drill bit and I'll send it through, and that cleans it up. And the reason it cleans it up is because I actually have a 9/16 bolt right here. If I can do this one-handed, if you look, a 9/16 bolt won't fit through any of the factory holes. There you go. That's actually a better view. The whole car is metric, and an M12 is smaller than a 9/16. So what I'm going to do is send a 9/16 through there. That'll clean up the hole and make it a way better fit on the bolt. And I'll also open this up to 9/16 from a 1/2 inch. And if anybody has any concerns about that, that's only a 1/16 of an inch that you're opening, which is 62.5 thousandths, 30, might as well just say 30 thousandths aside. It's really minimal what you're opening up. That's what I already did on my lower bars. I opened those up to 9/16 because right there through the frame was the same way as what's up top. The thing was just really beat up. And you could stick the 1/2 inch bolt through it that it's already drilled for, but as you saw, why would you want it to be as loose as can be? That's not what we're going for here. When we're this deep into something, you want to really clean it up. So those are going to get opened up to 9/16. I'll do that on the lathe. The ones up top, like on the chassis, I'll actually just send it through with a drill. When it comes to the rear of the upper bar, this is the piece that actually goes on the housing. That's fine to stay 1/2 inch, and the reason is because it's getting a new bushing. It's getting a solid bushing, which is drilled, just like the upper one. I keep saying upper, but the forward one, it's the same as a 1/2 inch and same as the bar already. So those are fine to stay 1/2 inch. But up there, we're gonna clean that up and make it 9/16. Way better fit, way tighter. It, like I said, I've already done those on the frame, and it's actually done on the lower bars. On the housing end, I opened up the hole to 9/16 too. And just like that one is, we're gonna get a shoulder bolt. That way the whole sleeve is riding on the shoulder. Just makes it way better than having the thing loose as a goose. So, all right, so I got my old bushings out. I'm getting ready to put the new ones in. All I had to do was just clean that area up with a sandpaper roll and as you can see, the thing's slipped in just fine. Only other thing I had to do on the actual casting of the housing was on the face of it. I just took a soft wheel on my grinder and smoothed that up. There was a high spot here, and then also on the back side that wasn't allowing the face of the bushing to actually sit flat. So I smoothed that up, and the things look good. We'll get them put in here in a minute, and once we do that, we'll be able to slide the rear back in once I get the holes drilled in the frame. But one thing I am going to do is I'm actually going to put never sees on the shoulder of this right here. That way, if I ever do have to get them back out, I'll have a easier shot at it. And then we'll just put Loctite on the ring to keep it there. But being able to have never sees on it will make it much easier. Go figure, I can't get it in one-handed. There we go. It'll make it much easier getting it back out if we have to, because eventually these are going to come out and go in a 9-inch housing that I have. So got the bolt hole already drilled to a 9/16 all the way through. Like I said, that's what we were going to do, get rid of the M12. I just want to show you the difference from one side to the other. Went ahead and smoothed this side up, and what you see remaining is actually indentions, not raised spots. So you just got to live with that. The big washer that we're going to put over top will cover it anyways. But clean the inside there. The inside here, kind of hard to see though. On the inside of the frame though, there's no way we can clean that unless you took the body off, which we're just not doing that. But I'll show you. Here's our bolt. It's our 9/16. Goes all the way through. And what's really nice is the shoulder continues all the way through to the other side. The threads just start to happen as it goes through. So, and as you can see, all those indentions that are there are getting covered up by the washer. So, still got to do the other side. Got the bar up in here. The hole's drilled, everything's cleaned up. You've already seen that. The situation we're running into right now is that gap right there is not big enough to fit another washer in. And I like running washers on both sides of it. And you kind of need to, because if you didn't, I mean, you have that gap there, which would close if you cranked it down. But I don't care for that idea of doing something. To me, it's just not the right way. I mean, it works, people do it all the time, but for me, I don't care for it. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to spread this ear back, and you can't tell on the camera, especially not with everything in here, but this ear is actually pulled inward from about here to here. The whole thing is shoved this way. I put a straight edge on it, and from the top to the bottom, as you sweep across, you can see a gap through there. So I'm going to pull this back out, and I'll show you how we're going to spread that. Pretty primitive way of doing what we need to do, but it works. You're just going to hold the bolt as you turn the nut, and it's going to shove this out. The only thing is you need to shove it a little past center, because it is going to spring back. So I'm just going to turn this, spread it out, and get us where we need to be. It works just fine for what we're doing. Obviously, if you have a porta power, you can do the same thing. To me, it's not worth taking the time to rig all that up when this is a pretty simple deal, and it's not going to take nowhere near as long to do. And there we have it, just like that. It's spread. Our washer fits. It's actually a little loose, but that's fine, because once we pull this back in and it sandwiches everything, it'll be back straight. So just got to do the other side now, do the same situation, and our upper bar should be good to go once I go to Tractor Supply and get some bolts. So, the rear is back up in here. Got it pretty close to ride height. It's not spot on, but it's close enough to do what we're doing right now. It looks like everything's on clear with our arms and our sway bar, so there's no issue there. And what I did here is, once that sway bar arm is at 90 degrees, I put a plumb bob on it, which is wiggling. It's going to stay wobbling because I can't hold it. And that's hanging there because I wanted to get the distance from the center of that bolt to the axle housing. And right now it's hanging past the rear 2 inches. So my original thoughts were, I don't know if you remember earlier, I had said that it's the bar that's holding the sway bar to the cross member. I went ahead and put marks on that so I could drill it and actually shorten it an inch at a time if I wanted to. So my original thought right now was go ahead and shorten it an inch, and then that'll bring it in closer down here, because I have these tabs right here to go on, and from the center, or from the welded edge of the housing to the center of that bolt hole, is 3/4 of an inch. So if I shorten the sway bar arm an inch, and then that sticks out 3/4 of an inch, we're only a 1/4 inch off from being straight up and down, which that's good enough, I would think. But the more I thought about that, I don't necessarily want to shorten it up here, because even though it's shortening it, because this is on an angle, it's actually going to move it higher. And by doing so, when this swings, it gives it less clearance up top, because it is now shoved it back an inch, which is what we want, but it's actually moved it up some, which I say exaggerated angle, but just so you get the picture. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm just going to drill another hole in the arm. I'm going to drill a hole that is 1.25 inches further down and just mount it there. The reason for doing that as well is, like I said, you don't have to do that, but also this rear is eventually going to come out of this car, and the reason being is because I have a Ford 9-inch that has a back brace on it from one side to the other. I'm sure you've seen 9 inches like that, and I believe once I get that in there, I'm actually going to need that bolt hole that is the furthest point in order to make it work with the arms. So that's why I think my best bet is just to drill another hole in the arm to be able to move the housing joint further, leave everything how it is right now, and then down the road, once I gather enough parts to put that rear together, I'll probably end up going back to the original hole that is on the mount. So that's where I'm at right now, I think. So I guess we'll just go ahead and get started on that. We'll pull these off, and if I can get it off. There we go. Go ahead and pull that off and start drilling it. So just get a better view of it right here. You can understand. I'm going to leave that hole, just measure off 1.25 inches, drill another one, and then that's what we'll use for the time being. So I'm going to get the other one pulled off. I'm going to try and bolt them together using that and somehow locating off of that. That way I can just drill through both of them at the same time. While I was thinking about it, I just wanted to show you so maybe it wasn't as confusing of what I was explaining earlier with those arms and drilling the hole and not using the last one. The reason was because, like I said, this is a 9-inch housing that I got that's eventually going to go in the car. And looking at it, roughly the anti-roll bar brackets are going to land somewhere in here. This section of the housing is wider than the one that's in the car right now. So if I was to move that arm by shortening the bracket and moving it to the frame, when it came time to put this housing in, that bracket would probably end up on the top side of the housing, which that's not an issue, but I would ideally like to keep it on the back side. And it doesn't have a brace on it at the moment, but it's eventually going to get one. So you got to think too, by the time it gets the brace on it and everything else, it's probably actually going to be sticking out here. And then at that point, the tab would be on the top. So it's just trying to plan ahead, because I know I'm going to end up using this housing. It was just like earlier too, when I said I was putting those solid bushings in the housing. I was going to put never sees on it in case I need to reuse it again. Well, it's because I will end up needing to reuse it again. It's going to end up going in this housing. So I'm just trying to be forward thinking on the whole deal, because what's in the car now isn't permanent. This will be going in probably not soon, but hopefully soon. The reason it's not right now is because not that you even care to hear any of this, but the center section that's in my S10 right now is going to get changed, because I'm putting a stick shift in it, so what's in it now is not going to be suited to go with the stick shift. It's a stock center section with 35 spline axles. And if you know about, I think the stock center section it has a bearing of a 3-inch 060 something. I'm just rough guessing. Don't quote me on that. Aftermarket cases run a 3.25 inch bearing, which has a whole lot more surface area with a 35 spline axle than it does with the standard case. So I'm going to upgrade what's in my S10, and when I take the stuff out of it, the center section and the spool is what will end up going in this one. It's held up in my S10, which has more power than this does, or than the Buick will. So that's why I have no doubt that it'll be fine going in this, even though the surface area around the bearing in the case is thinner because of the 35 spine. I know I'm probably just rambling at this point, but in case you're watching this and you're wondering, dude, why don't you just put the 9-inch housing in it right now? Well, I mean, I could, but then I'm buying parts twice, and I don't want to do that. Plus, I don't have axles for this. I don't have brakes for this yet. I'm just trying to piece this housing together as I go along. Not trying to spend a fortune at one time when, truth be told, what's in the car right now is working fine. And if I didn't get I got this is a quick performance housing I got for $300. If I didn't get this housing, it wouldn't even be a question about a 9-inch going in it. It would just stick with the 8.5 10 bolt. But because I got the housing so cheap, and I knew down the road I'd be swapping parts of my S10, that's why we're having this conversation of why the 9-inch will eventually go in the Buick. But at the moment, that's on hold. Got the hole drilled, moved it in 1.25 inches, like we had talked about earlier. No problem there. The way I ended up holding this arm and the other one together was we already had the bolt hole there, so I was able to, I actually drilled the threads out, and I'll tell you why in a minute, but I drilled the threads out, that way the 3/8 bolt slip all the way through. And what I did here was I turned down this piece that slips in between them splines. That way I took the other bar, sat on top, bolted the bolt end tight, and then I just took this splined end, and how you can squeeze those together, how it would be on the actual sway bar, is how I clamped it to that. So both of these were locked together when I drilled it, because that's the hole that I wanted to make. And if you look here, while I was in there, while I was doing it, I went ahead and drilled another hole. The reason being is because I got to looking at it, and I figured, while I'm already working on it, I might be able to make it a little bit better in my opinion. I'm not saying that it truly is or isn't, or that the piece before wouldn't work how it was, but appearance-wise, to me, it is going to end up being a little bit stronger and ease of mind thing mainly. So remember, that's the original hole. That's our new hole. That's also a new hole I drilled. So try kind of just piecing it together. That's how it would have been, just the bolt holding the heim joint on the outside of this shaft. That's how it was designed to be used. Like I said, probably would have worked fine. But what I did was made these spacers. These are 1/2 inch thick, 3/8 hole in it. The reason it's 1/2 inch is because that's the same width as the actual heim on the heim joint. So it's the same width as that. One goes right there, and on the other end. And I made this plate, which this isn't finished yet. This is just giving you an idea of how it all goes together. And then that plate sandwiches everything together. I've already finished one side. So there you go. That's how it would sit in the actual car. Spacers take up the same gap as the heim joint on both ends. That way it squeezes everything correctly and it still slips on. All of this is on the inside of the spring, so it won't interfere with anything. Like I said, I don't know if it was necessarily needed, but to me, it makes me feel a little bit better knowing that that heim joint's grabbed on both sides. And also, if I do ever need to go back to the other hole, just pull the heim joint, pull the sleeve, swap them. But nothing too crazy. Just, I already had the aluminum rod. I already had that, so just chucked it up in the lathe, drilled it, cut it, and that's just flat bar that I drilled and just rounded the edge on the belt sander. So, like I said, I don't know that it was needed, but to me, it's an ease of mind thing knowing that it's grabbed on both sides. So I'll go ahead and clean up the other one, get that finished, and then we'll have them up on the bar and go to making the actual links. I got my left-handed heim joints on order, so once those get here, we'll go ahead and do the same with those. Get the side or get the link that we need and chuck it up in the lathe, drill it, tap it, and that should be the final piece. The final main piece is still got. Once we do that, we'll weld the tabs in the rear. All right, it's been a couple of days, so I'll be completely honest, I forgot where we left off, but where we're at now is the rear back up in there. Everything's tight, all the arms are on, shocks is back on. What I'm going to do now is actually get wheels and tires put on this thing and sit it down on blocks. That way I can go ahead and put the roll bar and our roll bar back up in there and get the arms level on that and put the tabs on the rear and get the length for the other arm that I need to make with the heim joints on it. So that's what we're going to do next. Did get a little bit of paint thrown up on there just so it won't rust. It's gray, that's what I had. Don't really care because you ain't even going to be able to see it now. So we got the car down on blocks, so it is sitting at ride height. I bounced it around on the front and rear quite a few good times just to make sure it did settle in. So it's got the sway bar back up in there. The next thing I'm going to do is kind of hard to see right there, but that's about 90 degrees compared to the housing. And the next step is I got this 5/8 solid bar, just aluminum, had it laying around. I'm gonna go ahead and drill it and tap it for the heim joint. That'll be on the actual sway bar itself. That's normal right hand thread. Start with that just because it's easier, and what I'll do is I'll go ahead and put the heim joint in, let it hang from the arm and make sure it's at 90 like I want. That way I can take a measurement know where to cut it and tap it for the left-hand thread. That'll be mounted on the housing side. And once I have that link to the correct, once I have that sway bar link cut to the right length that I need, then I'll be able to go ahead and weld the tab on the housing, and I'll have the dimensions that I need to do on the other side as well. So there's one arm done. It's 6.5 inches long is what it turned out to be. Got the heims threaded in on both ends. One's the right hand, one's the left hand, just like how any style of bar like that would be. I did get a little off on my hole up there, because remember I drilled that to try and get this at a 90. It's pretty close. It's actually 88 degrees, so I just got a little off. We're just gonna have to live with it. It's still better than being all the way out like it was, because that's actually 83 degrees, so it's not a perfect 90, but we're just gonna have to live with it. One thing I am gonna have to do is grind that, which is a little kind of hard to see. Grind the bracket off that holds the brake line on, because the bar is not 90 left or right. It's actually kind of tilted this way some. So once I grind that off, make a new mount for that, this will be straight. So got one of them done, and just now gotta make the other. So not too bad, just takes a little bit of time. And there's the first view of it all together. Both sides. Just got the link brackets tacked onto the housing right now. I'll finish welding them up tomorrow. It's getting too late tonight, but yeah, there you have it. From one side to the other. It's all together. So we'll get it finished welded, shoot a little paint on the brackets, and call this job done finally. I still got to make tabs to hold the brake lines down from where I had to cut the brackets off, because that's where those mounts ended up hitting. So it's not that big of a deal. And to be completely honest with you, I'm probably just going to throw zip ties around it. So, but there we have it. We are getting very, very close to being done, which is good. This is not that it's taking longer than I anticipated. It's just that I've ran out of time to work on the thing. So, but get it fully welded, shoot some paint, we'll be good to go. Finally, it is done. Did my best at color matching that rust with with gray spray paint from Tractor Supply, but tabs are welded, painted, everything's bolted in, everything moves nice and freely. So hopefully we'll get to be able to try it out soon. It still trips me up of how crooked that thing looks, but I swear it's not. It's just some kind of optical illusion, but part of it. It's in there. It's in there now. So hopefully next 2 weeks, I think, we'll be able to go down to VMP and see how this helps with the body roll. This thing, it'll lean over pretty good. People think G bodies can lean. They ain't seen what a B body can do without a rear sway bar. So there we have it. Sway bar's in. Want a whole lot to it. It's just that it never got time to work on it consistently. Probably been fooling with this thing for 3 weeks now, but it's done. So you're gonna see how well it works.